how you choose the right company. This is where I think it's really important for councils and especially procurement companies to understand the basic physical costs of a service so that they understand when you're being underquoted. And unfortunately, we're living in a world where people want to win your business, sometimes at any cost. And that means that they'll underprice to win the work, knowing that they can't do the job properly. So if I can just remind you all what door drop is, just a basic walk up to a letterbox, put the item through, lands on the doormat and it gets picked up. And there's a lot of research done by JICMail, which shows, how long people read a leaflet, how long it's kept for, how many people in a household will see it. And also they've now done sort of work on how environmentally friendly a leaflet is over an email, which I know a lot of people find that hard to believe. But, when the forests are planted for paper, that's a benefit to the environment. And, when they're cut down, new forests are always being planted. Whereas with emails, you've got the cost of manufacturing computers and all the other things that cause carbon. So if we then just move on to the costs. So unfortunately, when everyone thinks of door drop, they just think of a distributor and the cost of a distributor. But behind that, there is the transport costs, the office costs, the warehouse costs, and the software costs that are needed to plan the mapping and, using CRM systems like Salesforce to keep everything organized. So if we just start off with distributors, on minimum wage, it's £125 for a 7.5-hour day. And if you use London living wage, that's even higher. So you can sort of break down the cost when you do a cost per 1,000 by how many people can deliver in a day, and I'll come on to that. But then you've got the shared cost of the transport. So we use some electric vehicles, we've got vans, we've even got electric bicycles, but there is still a cost, even if they're getting on a bus or a train to get to area. And we've worked this out on an average across all forms of transport to be £6 per person per day. And then with the office cost, we've got 2 warehouses and we've got about 15,000 square feet and about 15 office staff. And when you combine all of those costs and divide it down by the volume we put out per year, which is about 160 million items, it works out at about £2.50 per 1,000 for our office costs and 83 pence for the warehouse cost. And some people say, well, why should we be charged for your storing of our goods? But we have to keep them dry. Sometimes with something like a council borough drop, the printer wants to get them out of their print yard. They bring them into us maybe 1 or 2 weeks in advance of us doing the delivery. So our warehouse holds about 900 pallets, and we normally put out about 30 to 40 pallets per day. So you can see we've got the capacity to hold about 3 weeks' work at any point. And it varies because a box of leaflets might be 5,000 leaflets if they're A5s in a standard carton, whereas a pallet of 1 ton pallet of magazines, that's going to take up a whole pallet bay. So, all of a sudden you've got, say, 2,000 magazines on a pallet and an 85,000 borough. You need sort of 43 pallet bays to store that. Oh, I missed that at the end. I don't know if everyone saw that. What was that I put on? Oh, that was just the mapping and the CRM. We're one of the only companies in the country that actually pay A to Z to use their digital data set. Most people are just using it on the fly, just getting an A to Z map and photocopying it. But we have paid £5,000 a year to have access to their data sets. And we've done that for 2 reasons. One is they update them regularly. By having a data set, we get regular updates. Whereas if you're using an A to Z map and you're keeping that for years, the borough boundaries might change, new roads go in. In London in particular, the Olympic Village is now its own postcode. That didn't used to exist. So you know, by having hard copy maps, they very quickly go out of date. And then we've got other softwares, like we have the software that we use for the tracking, which is a company called GPS Track It 24/7. So they have their own server that they hold all the data tracks, so it's independent from us, and we have to pay to use that system. And then there are other softwares like Geoplan. I'm sure some of you know geoplan.com, that do a lot of specialist mapping, ordnance survey. They've all got various online systems that we can use. So just coming on again to the costs per thousand and why it varies so much. So unfortunately, I'm using London. I know it's a bit unfair. Everyone always uses London rather than another city, but it just highlights very clearly the green is a very strong urban area where you can deliver upwards to sort of 1,500 addresses in a day. Some blocks will have external letterboxes, and there might be a bank of 30 letterboxes, and you can deliver that in, you know, a number of minutes. Whereas when you move out into a suburban area, you're going to drop down to sort of 800-900 in a 7.5-hour day, which is sort of 1 to 2 a minute. And then if you go into a rural, and I've not used a proper rural, I've just used a sort of outskirts of a city, you're down to 1 a minute, which means that in an hour you're going to deliver 60, and in 7.5 hours after you've taken your break out, you're only going to deliver about 450 items. And as I've said before, the labour cost for that was £125. So you can suddenly see how distribution rates for a rural area should be upwards of £250 a thousand. And I think it's also interesting just for you all to realise the madness of our services. You're not paying for the item to go through the door. You're being charged for walking between addresses. That is what takes the time. If all the addresses were just one big bank of letterboxes and you stood there with your leaflets, you'd have them done in you know, no time at all. But you're basically paying for that time that it takes someone to walk at an average walking speed of sort of 2 to 3 miles per hour between addresses. And then there's even downtime when they're having to wait to be reloaded and restocked, which is why we have vans so that they can be restocked during the day. And just time to stop and read the map or take a comfort break. You know, that's all part of the service. So I keep going on about GPS tracking. I actually am quite proud that I bought GPS tracking to the UK from Sweden, from a company called Ericsson, who were trying to sell it to me. And at the time, the tracking was only 1 a minute. And I said, well, the problem with that is within a minute, we can have delivered to 3 addresses. Because we just said in an urban area, you can do 180 per hour, 3 a minute. So that means it would look like we've walked past 2 properties and delivered 1 if we use the tracking with the current, you know, minute tracking. So I said, can you get tracking every 5 seconds? And they said, well, no, because it's coming from a satellite. So I said, well, what if you historically stored 12 tracks up at the satellite and sent them down 1 minute in you know, in arrears, as it were? And they said that could be done. So that's how it came about that live tracking could track with 12 tracks a minute, which is now used in you know, safeguarding people in homes, doing door drop. They're even now tracking mobile traffic lights so that if they get stolen, they know where they are, and they can also see when the batteries are running low. Which is quite interesting. A lot of door drop companies are using data loggers. Now, a data logger doesn't have a SIM in it, a SIM card like a phone. So what that's doing is it's giving you a form of tracking, but it's something that's more sort of akin to your car tracking system, where you're not paying a monthly fee for a SIM, but it can be manipulated. And that's what I don't like about it. And that's what I think you all need to be aware of, is to get whatever companies you're using, if you're using an independent door drop company, get them to start using live tracking. And we're not talking a lot of money. I mean, this device costs about £50. So it's £1 a week and it's paid off in the first year. And the access to the sim and the server is about £5 a month. So again, if you divide that down by sort of even 20 days a month that someone might be distributing, it's not a big cost, but it really gives you peace of mind that the service is accurate. Then we come on to the A to Z mapping data set. Now, it doesn't have to be A to Z. There's Ordnance Survey are now doing some great maps. Geoplan, based in Harrogate, they're fantastic. So I just think that it's important that the companies you use are using the most up-to-date maps so that they are getting the right boundaries and are aware every time a boundary change takes place within a borough. Because quite often the councils aren't always aware themselves of when the borough changes have taken place, and then how that affects the quantity of addresses within a borough. So, you know, we've got some councils that actually update us every 3 months with how many new addresses are coming in. Wandsworth is one in question that I know are very good at keeping that data, but it's really important. And then what to watch out for. So this is, I hate doing this to all the other companies out there, but it's important that you have the information of what games are being played. And the first game that some companies do is they just increase the number of leaflets you need. So they might know that your distribution only needs 20,000 and they'll say, yes, print 25,000. So they've done two things there. They've made you print 5,000 that are never going to see the light of day. And that's obviously not good for the planet, and it's not good for the council's money. And secondly, they've done that so that they can give you a lower cost per thousand, but they've got more thousands than they need. So all of a sudden, they could be quoting you £80 a thousand, and they're getting 25 times 80 when they should really be charging £125 a thousand and only charging you for 20,000. So that's one to look out for. The other thing is, if you're letting a door drop company print for you, make sure they're printing the full quantity. You know, there's a number of ways you can check on that. You can either get them to get you a delivery note from the print firm if it's an external print firm and not themselves, or you know, get them to sign some document so you've got it in writing that they've printed the right number. And the reason for them playing games here is they might undercharge you on the print or the distribution, knowing that they are not going to print them all, and they might not be printing them all because they've no intention of delivering to every address. And that's terrible. That's fraud on a big scale, and pretty much the company itself doing the fraud. So that's bad. Then not putting enough distributors on the job. So I've already explained how many can be done in a rural and a semi-rural and an urban area. Once you know that information, you should have an idea how many people need to be put on the job. So you then know, you can say, well, how many days are you going to take to do this, and how many people are you going to put on each day, or it might vary each day, but at least you've got a basic knowledge of how many hours are going to be used. House skipping. This is where the live tracking covers you, because with a data logger, it will be showing you a track down a road, but they could be missing one house, delivering a house, missing a house, delivering a house. That means they're only doing half the job, and the tracking will look like they've done it all because there'll be a line down the road. When you use live tracking, you get much more accurate tracking up to each letterbox, and you can see that they've gone within there's, I can't remember the actual name, but there's like a field that the tracking will home into within a metre. So you can see that they've been up to each letterbox rather than just walked along the pavement. So that's a really important one. And then sometimes companies miss parts of the map. They just blatantly don't deliver to whole segments. And again, live tracking will cover that off for you. And again, data, photoshopping things. We've all seen so many things now, games being played. You need to be able to have access to the tracking so you can see in real time that it's live tracked. So that's that. So my advice to all of you is to get it in writing at the beginning of the planning stage of a door drop, how many distributors are going to be used, how many hours they are calculating for the job, so that you can very clearly see whether it can be done. Ensure the company uses live tracking. There's probably 10 different live tracking companies now. They're all independent, so they're not controlled by any door drop companies. They all have their own servers. So, you know, you could even supply them your own tracking devices if they weren't prepared to get their own, but I think they're cheap enough that everyone can afford to get them. I also think, and I don't think councils are very good at this, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, Geoff. And this is just all councils, don't send people out to check on door drop companies. So I think it's very wise throughout a distribution to send somebody out, even if it's just for 1 hour, to watch and monitor a distribution. And you can always get in advance where they're going to be, or you can just drive around an area till you see them working. Normally distributors wear high-vis tabards so you can see them very clearly. So that's so they can be seen visibly by their team leaders, but also so that residents don't get scared when they see people walking up the drive. They can see that they're meant to be there because they've got a tabard with the name of the company on. So I think, depending on whether it's a borough-wide or a small drop, try to send someone out and watch. And then at the very end, carry out some spot checks. Don't let the door drop company carry out their own spot checks, because all they're going to do is go back to exactly the houses they know they've delivered. So if they have been playing games and they've only been doing half the street or the beginning and ends of a street, they know exactly where to go to get positive back checks. Whereas if you use either an emailing list of a straw poll of your residents, or if you actually just get somebody to go out and do some door knocking and just say, have you received this item? But if you're going to do it, you need to do it within a day of completion of a distribution, because of memory decay. People won't remember having received something. And you also need to ask the resident, could anyone else in the house have picked it up? Because we do sometimes get people saying, no, we've not had this. And then it turns out another resident in the house had seen it and picked it up and then put it in the bin. So that's my advice.